might be nice, but if you are not, I won't force you to. I couldn't even if I wanted to, but obviously. Okay, and so you are in the session called Imagining Blackness. This is a conversation about bringing Lego art and play to the classroom, and the conversation is between Jeff Harry and Ekow Nimako. Jeff is the interviewer and Ekow is the artist. So I'd just like to introduce each of them briefly, and then we'll have their conversation. So I'm going to introduce Jeff first because I want to move to a video for Ekow. That will make sense. So Jeff, I'm going to read a little bit from his profile here, shows individuals and companies how to tap into their true selves to feel their happiest and most fulfilled, all by playing. Jeff assists teams in building psychologically safe workplaces for their organization using a positive psychology play method. And he has worked with Google, Microsoft, Southwest, Adobe, the NFL, Amazon, Facebook, all helping their staff to infuse more play into the day-to-day. And Jeff says that while we spend most of our time pretending to be important, serious grown-ups, it's when we let go of that facade and just play that the real magic happens. Fully embracing your own nerdy genius. This is time for you to play with your tie here, Jeff. Demonstrate, yeah. Whatever that is, gives you the power to make a difference and change lives. And Jeff believes that we already have many of the answers we seek by simply unleashing our inner child. We can find our purpose and in turn help create a better world. Now, I met Jeff several years ago and was aware of his personality before this started. And when we were planning this event, Elsa, who's one of the organizers, one of the outreach people for the African Studies community of us, showed me Ekow Nimako's work. And when I saw it, I immediately thought that I would love to see these two people in conversation. So let me tell you about Mr. Nimako. Ekow Nimako is a Ghanaian-Canadian internationally exhibiting Lego artist. Combining multidisciplinary and formal arts program, Nimako explores Afrofuturism and Black narratives through an unmistakable figurative aesthetic that transcends the iconic medium. And Mr. Nimako has exhibited works in Canada, Germany, Korea, and the UK. And before I do anything else, I would like to show you a video, or at least the first part of a video, so that you get a sense of what his work looks like. Because if you haven't seen it before, I think you're going to be really amazed and impressed. This is not what I want. Okay, so we're going to watch 30 seconds of this. Hold on, let me stop share and make sure that I have the sound on. Let me do that.
It's not something you associate with Blackness or with Black culture in any regard, right? Even the minifigure culture, the standard yellow minifig where they started, still is almost like, you know, synonymous for white. And for me, I'm just like, well, when I'm gonna make my art, it's definitely gonna be Black art. The number one question that comes to me when people engage my work is, what's this made of? And then it's Lego. Lego? And then, you know, there's this kind of surprise and shock. And that to me is actually pleasing. My name is Ekow Nimako. I'm a visual artist, a sculptor, a Lego artist. Yeah, you caught me as I was actually just extending her hair, because I figured, I felt like she should have long hair. And I mean, as a father that has daughters, you know, I'm used to doing my daughter's hair when they were really young. Growing up.
I'm going to pause right there. I just wanted to give you a taste before we started, because I think that stuff is so incredible. And I felt like it was important for you to know what we were talking about. So I am going to unshare my screen now, and I am going to highlight both of these gentlemen, and I'm going to have you take it away. And so we can listen to your conversation. Thank you, both of you, very much for doing this.
Thank you. Hey, thanks so much. Ekow, oh, I'm so excited about this, man. Everyone, y'all need to watch that video. Both of his videos that he's made are phenomenal. I was just nerding out again. So Ekow, let's get into it. Let's not waste time. How did you get into this? Like, where did this come from?
Well, it's I guess the earliest point when I really was really fascinated was Lego. But when I imagined myself kind of doing something like this, I was really young, like most people, right? I was 4 years old and just really into Lego, playing with it a lot and subscribing to Lego magazine and just wanting to just do what I was doing forever. That was what my young brain, just kept telling myself every time I would play. I just want to keep doing this. But as I got older, I really got into myself as an artist and was into drawing by the time I was 9. And then by the time I was 12 and 13, I was making music, and really music kind of took over, and I was pretty much making music for most of my life. And then it wasn't, and during that phase, I was not really connected to Lego and Lego culture. So during that boom where Lego kind of exploded with the intellectual property stuff, and they started doing Marvel and Batman and Star Wars, and that really kind of revived the company and launched them into the stratosphere. That's when I was actually kind of separate from my Lego play and activities, because I was pursuing my other artistic mediums and passions. And then it wasn't until sometime later, actually. So the full story is the Transformers movie changed a lot, because I was a huge fan of Transformers growing up. So I was always trying to build them and create spaceships.
Prime, yes.
Yeah. So when the Michael Bay movie came out, live action, I got really inspired again. I was studying art at that time, sculpture and drawing at York University. And I just started building again, because I had Lego still with me from when I was a child that I'd bought for my daughters and stuff like that. I wasn't really playing actively, but once that movie came out, it inspired me to build again. So I started building these Transformers from the movie, listening to like the albums that would really kind of inspire me, whether it was like, hip hop records or Radiohead or whatever. And I just got into this zone for hours. My roommates are like, "What are you doing?" And I'm just like, "I don't know, man. I used to play with this stuff all the time." And it just kind of took over. And then as years passed, I started incorporating Lego into some of my art projects in university. And like I had to build a drawing machine one time for a drawing course. And I used Lego because it was just a material that I was really familiar with. I started using metal and wood in the sculpture studio, but those materials are really process heavy. And I find that depending on your economic or socioeconomic position in life, you can't necessarily just become like a welding metal artist, working in your backyard. Like it requires a lot of industrial equipment and things like that. So, and also being a father, I wanted something I could do at home while I was just there with my kids. So it just kind of became like this natural progression. I was working as a writer. And that time in university, I wrote my first novel, and I was really into writing, and that's what I wanted to do. So I got a job as a writer, and then years later that I lost that job. So I found myself just with a lot of time on my hands to create. And aside from making music, I just started really building with Lego. And honestly, it's when I saw that there were other people in the world that had careers building on scale, like, I had no idea that was a thing, So once I saw that there was other people, like an artist out of New York, his name is Nathan Sawaya. He's kind of like world renowned for his like bricks and stuff. So I was like, oh, it's a thing. So if people can do it, if someone else can do it, I can absolutely do it. And then I got a grant to create some work for a Black History Month series. So in Canada, for a time being, one of the largest banks here was working with a Black organization called BAND to distribute grants to Black artists to create during Black History Month. And in key cities, Montreal, Halifax, Toronto, there would be exhibitions and theater performances, and the bank was basically the sponsor for it. So I managed to make a submission and I got accepted. So it's the first time in my life that I received money to make art using like Lego. So it was really fantastic. And more importantly, it was this merging of using Lego, but also right at that time too, the development or further development of my own like sense of Black consciousness started really getting heightened. I was around more people that were really into like specifically like Black culture and pushing the culture forward, and like Black queer women. And like I cite them often because like they were just like so forward thinking, and moving and pushing the culture forward. So I was thankful to be around them at that time. And it just kind of one thing led to another. And I started building like figurative sculptures. I mean, that in that Vice video that you all just saw, it's so funny because that sculpture I'm working on in that video was the first figurative sculpture I made. And it actually looked a lot like my youngest daughter at that time. Inadvertently, I didn't plan to make it look like her, it just kind of turned out that way. And that sculpture has actually grown over time. So right now that artwork is in Scotland as part of like an exhibit called Brick by Brick, which features different artists that use Lego and stuff like that. It started in the UK and is touring around rural communities in the UK. But that sculpture has grown. It started off about the size of a 6-year-old. And then as my technique improved, I was like, no, I need to change it. So the artwork would exhibit and then come back and then I would change it. And so, yeah, it really was just like this long process of just development and going deeper into my own sense of culture and identity and finding a way to like make this marriage, you know?
And then when did you feel like, oh, I can talk about representation through Lego? Because no one else is doing that right now.
Yeah. I mean, and that's something I didn't see. Like, you know, growing up, the Lego sphere is so white, you know?
White.
Yeah.
Like all the minifigures are like yellow.
Yeah.
And that's supposed to represent all the colors.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, it taught me early that yellow is code for white.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And that's the thing that isn't really talked about, particularly with Lego culture. Like they have their white minifigs, like with the light tan skin, and then they have the brown ones that are like the black people in the minifigures. But then they have these yellow characters that they're like, no, these are just yellow. I'm like, no, white. They just have yellow skin. Because if you look at their hair and you look at the Lego movie and all of it, the voice actors that they get to use them, all of it tells us that these yellow characters are actually white. They're not yellow. So that still further ostracizes us in this way where we're supposed to accept it as inclusive. Like it's just a color, but it's not, you know? So all the black kids out there playing with Lego, they get the yellow character. It's a different feeling than maybe when a white kid gets the yellow minifigure character. Let's say it's just like someone that has a job, like a mechanic character. But that mechanic, you know, we know. And that's the thing, even as small kids are very perspicacious. They know, they see these things and they're just like, okay, I'm gonna play with this, but it's not really me. It doesn't look like my auntie.
Yes. Yeah. And just to add on to that, so I used to run these Lego inspired STEM programs, and you would see kids around the minifigure area. And there were a lot of kids that just weren't able to build themselves. And then I even remember when I ran something for like some tech company, and it was predominantly South Asian, and they were like, where is all the brown and black, you know, mini heads? So we had to order them separately because like it was so hard to find black and brown faces.
And another point, you know, it's not only hard to find, it's more expensive.
So expensive.
It's actually more expensive for the brown. Like the kits that have characters that are racialized are actually more expensive. I met someone who reached out to me from Chicago who's like an academic out there, and he had this whole report that he put together because he's also a Lego fan on these kind of statistics. So when I started talking to Lego and like they became aware of what I do, and you know, we started getting associated, I talked about this guy and bringing his report in, and I reached out to him and said, listen, I'm starting to talk to them. So hopefully I'm going to be able to start helping to change the culture there. You know, and I appreciate that I have that kind of platform to do that because of just like the content of my work, but also like the virtuosity of like my technical abilities.
So getting into your most recent work, can you tell us more about your most recent work, specifically, you know, the Building Black Civilization work that you're doing?
So just to give like a little bit of context, I have 4 distinct bodies of work that I typically work in when I start to build. I'll have Building Black Mythos, which is the series that features the figurative sculptures of people, characters, animals, things like that, creatures. The Building Back Amorphia, which is focused on recreating African inspired masks, but also infusing Afrofuturism into it. And like some of them look like vessels, things like that. Then there's Building Black Graphica, which is one of the newer series I've done, which explores wild style graffiti. And then there's Building Black, really cool series.
I want to see that. Do we have that?
I don't know. I have I can share whenever you're ready. Let me know and I'll share a screen and I'll show you what I've got.
Picture of that there of the.
Yeah, let's just throw it up there. We just want to see it.
Okay. Here we
Thank you so much, Shane.
Okay.
Should I go back. I put them in the order you sent them to me, Ekow.
Oh, no, this is fine. We could just stay here for a minute. So this,
Okay.
this is Building Black Civilizations. This is a sculpture called Kumbi Saleh 3020 CE from the Black work Building Black Civilizations. And civilizations came about when I was asked to create a body of work that would be in response to a show at the Aga Khan Museum called Caravans of Gold, Fragments in Time. So this show, it was an art historical show, 8 years in the making, had pieces that were essentially from the medieval era in sub-Saharan Africa and West Africa. And they were collecting all kinds of pieces from around the world to put into the show. And it was exhibiting at the Aga Khan Museum because they were really trying to highlight the role of West Africa, particularly in that period, but also, of course, because during that period, all the three main kingdoms of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai were like influenced by Islam. So, and they said, okay, well, you're a Ghanaian artist. We'd love to see what you could create with this. And I decided to create this body of work that would speak to that period in time in specific. And
wait, and then how much of this is a recreation?
I don't think any of it is particularly a recreation. I've seen some old pictures of like the remnants, archaeological remnants of the actual Kumbi Saleh, which existed at the end of the trade route through the Sahara in the kingdom of Ghana. And so I would look at these images of all these kind of architectural like structures, and I just started reimagining it. So this sculpture, Kumbi Saleh 3020 CE, is me projecting an image of what a capital city of a futuristic kingdom of Ghana would possibly look like 1,000 years from now. So I can't say it's particularly, like I didn't see enough content to say, okay, I'm gonna recreate this structure here and recreate this here. But it's the spirit of like that reimagination, which in many ways it's in my blood because Ghana, the modern day Ghana, did that in itself. It reached back into the past when it gained independence through the president at the time, and we said, okay, we're going to rename our country. We're no longer Gold Coast. We're going to call ourselves after this ancient kingdom of Ghana and call ourselves Ghana. So the ancient Ghana actually is where Mali and Mauritania are now. So it's actually quite disparate from modern day Ghana. It was really just them reaching back in West African history and getting a title of a kingdom that they felt would help transport them to the future. And that's what I'm doing in the same way, which is taking this ancient city and saying, okay, let's transport it to the future and imagine a new kingdom, a neo-kingdom of Ghana existing 1,000 years from now, one that is built upon the enjoyment of life and prosperity for all.
Okay, so this is the nerd in me asking this question, but like, are you channeling? What's happening when you're building like this? Like, do you feel like something you're taking genius from something else and then channeling it? What's going on?
I do feel that way. And if you could feel free to try the next slide too, because there's a couple pictures of the city. Yeah, there you go. We can stay on this one for a while. Yeah, I actually feel that way. Like speaking as an artist and not so much as like a Lego person, but just as a artist, there is something, I don't know, I don't want to say supernatural but there is this feeling when you're creating like sculptures like this and using a material that you grew up with that in many ways was not made for me, with Black children in mind. And the interesting thing too is that Denmark had like castles in Ghana where they they enslaved over 1 million of my people, of our people, right? So when I think about it, the Danish economy was bolstered. It grew from like what they earned from the slave trade, and that in many ways I'm sure helped to create like enough prosperity that the Christopherson family could make Lego. So, it's really strange, like the kind of connection. And then I won't say it's full circle because it's not, but at least there is like this recognition now for Lego where they're starting to change. If you look at their marketing, if you look at everything, you're seeing more Black people, you're seeing more people of color in their marketing and in their products. It's a slow process, but it's getting there, So yeah, I think I got a little tangential there and ended the question.
No, you answered. Do you want me to
No,
move ahead
no.
so we can see more of these? Because I know we have more pictures of the
Yes,
city,
yes,
and I don't
yes.
want to. Okay, here we go.
And that symbol at the top of the main central spire of the city is an Adinkra symbol that actually means the pursuit of happiness and enjoyment of life. And that was really important because when you use all Black, there is a certain level of sophistication you achieve, but also it's dark, you know, and sometimes because of the culture of like fantasy and sci-fi, I get a lot of people online immediately making connections to like Lord of the Rings and all this kind of stuff. Oh, it looks like this castle from this video game about dragons. And that has nothing to do with what I'm doing. I think that it's very easy to associate a kingdom that's been constructed in all Black and take on some kind of villainous connotation. And that's not what's happening here, you know, like, and I kind of like that there is that duality where you could look at it and maybe think, oh, something dark, a villain lives there. It's like, actually, no, that symbol is about prosperity and enjoying life and pursuing happiness. So all the people that live here are actually really happy. And, you know, if there is like this assumed monarchy there, they're not ruling with fear and putting up symbols of conquer. It's about enjoyment and, you know, prosperity. So.
And what's powerful also was there's so much beauty in this. You're flipping the script on what one considers beautiful in the Lego world. So this two things come up for me. One is, how do kids react when they see something like this?
They love it. You know, kids are, they're just so attuned to wonder, you know, and discovery. And they, you know, when they see something that they're gravitating to, but it's also something that they've never seen before. It's just like the questions just keep pouring out, you know. And I think there's also something to the materiality here too that they kind of interact with, because Lego is so colorful by design. So it's not like I'm doing something that couldn't be done when I'm talking about the palette anyway. Like any builder can just build in Black, you know, like I don't get access to special parts that no one else gets. It's the same Lego that everyone else has access to. It's just the inclination wasn't there to perhaps build in this way and like have this particular kind of subject matter, right? And they just love it, especially the figurative stuff. Like they love the civilizations work because it's like architectural and small scale, and if you go through it you can see like little vehicles. And when I built this sculpture, there's districts to this whole city, you know, there's an art district over here, and you know, all these things. I don't label it particularly, but it's in my mind as I'm building it, right? I'm going through here, I'm like, oh, this building looks a little strange, maybe that's where the art gallery would be, and you know, kind of go through it that way. And they see these little things and they respond so well. But the figurative stuff I find is what really draws them when they see like a sculpture of a Black girl, you know, or a sculpture with like an animal in it, like an example. You know, like they really kind of gravitate towards that because it's not something where they have to use a lot of their imagination to figure it out. It's literally like what you see. This is a Black baby with like, you know, wings. Like, that's amazing. I've never even seen that outside of Lego. Like using this material that typically we just build like houses and rocket ships, and now we have like ourselves. Like I'm seeing me, that looks like my little brother, you know, and that goes so far for the development of like like Black consciousness and just like identity politics and just really kind of understanding who we are and feeling like, you know, edified by the fact that someone out there cares enough to say, no, I want to create you. I want you to see you in this, you know?
So then this ties into my question. And Sharon asks, are these already Black or painted Black?
Sorry?
So this is all Black Lego, right? None of this is, okay.
Yeah. So, I only use Lego. There's no like, because I know there's a lot of like the facsimile companies, Mega Blocks.
Yeah, like Mega Blocks and all that. So a question then that comes up for me is then, what is it like being a Black man in this predominantly white Lego world, especially in that adult fan of Lego world?
You know, it has its nuances, but like, I mean, the straightforward answer is it feels exactly the same as anybody else that is racialized in a white, you know, the black guys in hockey, you know, and like all the other sports are pretty much dominated by black players, but you know, any other sphere where you walk in and you're like, I'm the only
NASCAR, same thing, NASCAR.
The only difference for me is that I'm not in like Lego spaces particularly too. Right. I'm not part of like, I don't go to the conventions and stuff like that. But I mean, I know what the feeling is, you know, I've seen it, and online, that's the space that is inhabited, right? When we talk about when Lego is going to do like the competition, or something else is going to happen, or anything that's just trying to galvanize people into creation, it doesn't speak directly to us, you know, it doesn't. And that's where that disparity, it hurts every single time, just like the rest of us, you know, whether you're walking into a classroom, you're a professor and you go into the boardroom, they're like, yeah, we're having, you know, a meeting. Okay, show up. And then it's just like, you have that little, okay, you know what's going down, right? And you know that it's like, you have, not to say that you're going to temper yourself or something, but you just have to be careful. You know, there's an awareness that happens, what they call like double consciousness, you know, where you're just, okay, I know I'm the only one here, so maybe I won't say that thing, and maybe I'll have to say that thing, you know, or maybe I won't say anything at all. Maybe I'm just going to be a fly on the wall in this situation because I've already pegged out the people, the detractors, the people that might, you know, have something to say. So it's a full gamut that we all kind of know, because it's happened to every single one of us at some point, whether it's walking into a Starbucks or setting up your display somewhere or being invited to talk somewhere, and you know the feeling, right? And that's what I'm honestly trying to change, you know, is really just help to create space and that comfort for people to just be their authentic selves, and actually not just that, but represent their culture and show themselves, right? Like there's so many East Asian, you know, for example, builders, like Lego is huge in Asia. But, you know, I personally don't see a whole lot of Asian culture, and not the like Chinese New Year sets kind of thing, but just like, you know, essentially what I'm doing just with a different culture using Lego. I don't see it a lot. I think often what happens is there's this kind of deference to like the white supremacist ideals and the iconography of like the white culture, right? Which is in so many ways like pop culture and how that works and how that's operated. You know, when the Lego's going to put something out and they're like, it's going to be Batman. Okay, but Batman is so white. You know what I mean? He's like, it's so funny. My wife, she has like this whole thing about Batman and Bruce Wayne being this terrible person and a white supremacist. It's like so true. It's like he's going out basically at night, billionaire,
evil guy,
going out at night and beating up on poor people for their crimes of inspiration, instead of creating infrastructure with his billion-dollar company to prevent.
Exactly. Not beating up any of his billionaire friends, going straight after right, and then being like, "Look, I'm the hero." Right. Wait. So you said this in one of your videos where you were saying how what was it? Biggie Small says, you know, there are rules to the ship, and you're all about pushing the rules. So what do you mean by pushing these rules? What rules are you pushing?
Yeah, it's more like the rules of like Lego in terms of how you're supposed to build. And, you know, it's not like I'm out here cutting up Lego pieces to make them fit my purposes. It's not like that. But, and this is not something I think is particular to like Black builders. This is when we're now talking about just innovation that comes from people just experimenting with things and just bending the rules. Like there's all kinds of, like, we call them illegal techniques, as I'm sure you've heard of, where builders, there's some that try to toot themselves as like these purists, and they only stick to like the very specific rules of clicking Lego and how it goes together. And then there's those that are just like, I mean, I'll bend the rules a bit. Like, again, I won't cut the stuff up. I won't file anything down or anything like that. But I don't necessarily have to click this together. I can just find ways to let it kind of be there. And I mean, I'm talking about real technical aspects about Lego building, but that's kind of what I meant when I'm talking about bending or breaking the rules. Because, you know, in order for me to achieve the things that I do with the material, it's like I'm kind of coming up with new techniques and doing things that, you know, are only possible with like, if you're gonna glue your parts, let's say.
Right.
I mean gluing, like just sticking something where you want it. I still play by the rules in that everything has to click. There has to be that snap. It has to be by the rules of Lego. But at the same time, some clicks are more tenuous than others. So I'll make sure to say, okay, I can click this, but it's not going to hold up an elbow. So I'm going to click it and glue it. And then I'm going to click this part and glue it. And so it reinforces the connection so that I can get these kind of shapes that are more curvilinear and speak more to like life.
Curvilinear. I don't even use that word. I need to use that word more. So are you getting recognized for your work the way other Lego artists like Nathan, Sawaya, and other people are, what is the reaction?
Reaction, well, honestly, the last year, there's been an explosion of like interest in my work. If you had talked to me 4 years ago, I might be a little bit more embittered, like, what? I should be here. Why is it I'm not getting shine? It's because I'm Black, isn't it? But in truth, I mean, everybody has in their time, and even when I came out the gate, there was overwhelming support from the most important community, the Black community, right? Just being like, an artist using Lego and building Black people, you have to see it. So that alone just gave me like just so much comfort and so much courage to keep going and doing what I'm doing. But the wider Lego audience, it just took time, and Lego definitely helped to do that when they posted my work and just blew up my Instagram. And then from that, they're just like, we have to do stuff with this guy. So currently I'm working on a commission that is going into the top corporate office of the Lego compound, the new Lego compound, because they've built a new compound now out in Billund, Denmark. And they have this skybox at the top of like the compound, which is where they have their like, I guess, corporate meetings and whatever. There's this huge like kind of playroom thing they have for everyone to de-stress and whatever else. But there's this corridor, and they reached out to me. One of their external kind of art companies reached out, and they were like, we love what you do, and I'm working on trying to get you in here. And it didn't, I guess, take too much work, because he reached out to me and was like, okay, we got to go ahead, let's do this. What ideas do you have? So I'm working on a sculpture called the Great Turtle Race that features life-size sea turtles that are kind of not anthropomorphized, more like hybridized. So they have like feathers, and their tails are longer. So they look more like sea turtle creatures rather than anything else, flying, in fact. And on their backs are two Black children riding these turtles, almost as if they were having a bike race, but instead they're these fantastical, whimsical looking children riding on the backs of these turtles. So that's going to be in like their corporate office as well. Even bigger, just crazy. We filmed a documentary on my career.
What?
I just found out a couple weeks ago that film, which I was fortunate enough to get Director X's company to direct, because Director X and I worked on a sculpture for a festival in Toronto called Nuit Blanche, where we just kind of got together and started talking about fantastical creatures and came up with this idea for a child riding on the back of a unicorn, this Black child warrior on this unicorn. And if you watch that Daily Vice video, later in the video, you get to see that sculpture of the unicorn. So I reached out to Director X when Lego said, hey, we're doing these Rebuild the World videos and we'd love for you to do one on you. I was like, okay, that's cool. But the video itself, I want it to be a Black production. So yeah. I'll find the people out here that can do it. And I think I know the people to do it. I mean, he's put together these Drake videos, these awesome, like really visually stimulating videos. And because I grew up as like a hip hop artist and in like that culture, I'm just like, okay, this movie has to be like, it has to have this like hip hop edge to it. It has to be like almost street, if you get what I'm saying, and they didn't bat an eye. They were like, yep, let's see what you can put together. And I made the connections. So one of their up and coming directors, LaShawn Harris, is the one that directed this movie, and it's phenomenal. So the movie actually worked its way up through Lego, because this was just supposed to be like one of their Rebuild the World videos,
right.
On online and live on their site. but they were like so impressed. It got its way up to like the VP of marketing, and they're like, okay, so we're making this movie the cornerstone of our Black History Month campaign. For the first time, Lego's doing a Black History Month campaign, and they're like, we're putting this movie front and center for that. So in February, it's going to be amazing. Like, we're going to get to see like the work that I'm doing, especially the work I'm doing with kids with the Building Beyond workshop. It's all in the movie. The artwork that's been acquired by the museum is in the movie, just showing me in my home studio in my element. It's really, really, really well done. So it's going to explode things, you know, because for the first time now, and something I never imagined, where the biggest billion-dollar toy company in the world is like, we're going to make a movie about you and put it out through all of our channels. We're going to put it out there, and just like, that's amazing. You know, do it, please. Like,
so then this gets into, then what do you hope your art then inspires, like in the next like few years?
Honestly, I want to see particularly more Black kids like just trying to do what I do, you know, like being like, okay, I'm going to build this Black character, I'm going to do this thing, and you know, and basically making it hard for me to get Black parts, because now everyone else is like, no, I got to build like Ekow Nimako, I got to parts and do it up. You know, I want, the workshops are great, but I also want at some point down the line in my career to, you know, have some kind of academic, you know, studio course about how to build art with Lego. And it doesn't necessarily have to be completely Black focused, where it's just like, this is how to build Black people out of Lego. It's not that. It's more just like, this is how to take this medium that's a toy, considered a toy around the world, and turn it into a respected visual art, fine art medium, just like any of the others, classics, you know, using ceramics or metal or whatever else has been around for centuries as like the art material. I want Lego to become like that. And they're doing amazing things to help secure their position to do that. Like their R&D department, they've invested millions, if not billions, to like extract fossil fuels from the process of making their ABS plastics. So they're reducing their carbon footprint, and therefore also trying to cement Lego as this material that can live on into the ages. And so because I'm seeing that kind of inventiveness and like consideration for the environment, and now slowly but developing consideration of like identity and disparities in their own company for like reflecting the world, then yeah, I mean, it'll be really great to see me with a white beard, you know, teaching a course on Lego at my alma mater, you know, and seeing kids coming in and being really excited to learn how to make actual like art using Lego, you know. And it's not for the faint of heart. That's the thing. I'm sure a lot of people will be, I want to do this, but not everyone can, you know. It's, you have to have a very particular kind of artistic eye or a sensibility to be able to differentiate fine art with Lego from hobbyist Lego creations, right? Which is often what we see out there. Like, you know, someone made a giant X-Wing fighter from Star Wars out of Lego. I mean, impressive for the fact that someone or a group of people made a large thing, any large thing that like skill, but not so impressive because we've seen that. And does the world need another giant Star Wars made of Lego thing? Like, no. But does the world perhaps need someone like, you know, using the material to, I guess, kind of delineate the problems that they've experienced in their country or their culture? Like, I know Ai Weiwei has done some stuff with Lego. And he's like, you know, and Lego actually didn't involve themselves. They kind of separated themselves from what he was asking for. And I mean, I get it, because everyone wants free Lego or more Lego to do their thing. But the truth is, they didn't become $1 billion toy company by just giving out free Lego to everybody that has a great idea. You know, it's still a business, right? So I don't necessarily agree or think that shading Lego for not giving you Lego is like the answer, but they didn't stop him from making what he was doing. And say you can't make that stuff talking about prisoners and like indentured, like, you know, Asian prisoners in Alcatraz. Like, you can't do that. They didn't try to stop him. They're just like, we just can't give you all the Lego you want.
So for anyone that doesn't know, Ai Weiwei actually built portraits of political prisoners, and then you went to Alcatraz to go look at them. It was surreal. But yes.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it was all, yeah, it was phenomenal. So wait, before we get into Q&A, because we got to get to other people's questions, can you briefly explain like what you referenced as the building beyond? Like, what is that, and how do you imagine that actually being used in classrooms?
Yeah, Building Beyond, it's a workshop that I developed a few years ago because it was when I was building, actually starting my Amorphia series, building African masks. And I wanted to create something because I realized how inaccessible my art actually is. Like, anybody can view it, anybody can see it online. In person, a little harder, you got to go somewhere, see it. But in terms of owning my art, building it yourself, or doing something that is like, you know, a personal experience of building, it was somewhat inaccessible. You know, it's like fine art it's not inexpensive, you know, so not everyone could get it. Like, there were a bunch of people, and still to this day, they reach out, they're like, oh my God, I'd love to. And then when, you know, the pricing catalog goes out, they're like, you know,
Like, never mind.
and I mean, and the other thing about it too, I know that that creates a little bit of distance, but I also need people to also understand this is one, fine art, and two, it's a sculpture. It's not a painting where, you know, you get your new apartment, you just throw up a painting. You need space for sculptures. Especially you need space for sculptures that are super delicate and can break very easily. So, you know, it's not the thing to have if you got kids running around and you don't have, you know, an art room where you could set up a display case and like very like museum style, because that's what my sculptures, one, deserve, because the work that went into them, they're not to be treated as if it's like a Lego trinket. And two, you want to keep it safe. It's fine art. You got to preserve it. So one of the only things we have in this world that appreciates, you know, so you want to preserve it and take care of it. So yeah, anyway, I realized that it was inaccessible. So I said, okay, I want to create something that young people can just build and it's easy for them to get. And that's what led me to create Building Beyond, which is a workshop where participants get to create their own descendant as an Afrofuturistic identity. So I have one here, example, right? This is like the archetypical piece for Building Beyond. It's called King Kofi, and King Kofi is like the ruler of the futuristic kingdom of Ghana, and that's just like kind of a story I spun for this. So initially, I was going into schools and actually doing the workshop. So I'd bring the materials, I'd give a brief presentation, and then I'd present the materials. There'd be like a template, so maybe just like the face part without the mouth on it, and then from there I would help them to adorn it and dress it, and they'd have parts there, and then they get to build it how they want. But during the pandemic, and honestly just before it, when my studio practice started to kind of just expand, I didn't have as much time to be going into the schools and like giving this the time that it deserved. So I switched to virtual, and that went, of course, with the pandemic, everyone was at home. So I did a few of the workshops virtually, and that was fine. But even then, I still found that it was taking away from my studio practice, which really needed my attention. So my wife had the great idea to say, you should make these like instructional sets, right? And I've done some instructional sets in the past for like little organizations or a museum here and there. But she's like, no, if you make a tutorial video, then the video will like exist forever and people can access the insights that you offer during the workshop. And then you just do what you do with the instructional stuff and get the instructions made. I'm like, of course, that's a great idea, you see? So there's me again, hailing up Black women for like holding it down and really like, pushing the culture forward, right? So yeah, so I made these templates. They're instructional. I put together a tutorial video, 10-minute video. So now it's actually going to exist on my website where anybody can just go to my website. You want King Kofi, you can buy a King Kofi. It'll get shipped out to you, has the instructions, all the parts are there. You put it together, you watch the video while you're putting it together. So you're learning about why I do what I do and the importance of representation and the importance of Afrofuturism in particular, because every form of resistance, civil rights, down to, disrupting apartheid, like every kind of movement was imagined first, right? We projected this, like even back to the point of like when you're talking about whether it's the South American slave trade or the transatlantic, North American slave trade, like that freedom was imagined. It didn't just occur. it was like thought of, there's a future. I see, that's Afrofuturism, right? There's a future where we're free and we're not in this situation. So let's build towards that. And that's why Afrofuturism is so great, where you could, you know, you could look at the stylistic elements and be like, Black people in spaceships, cool. But it's more than that. It's the fact that you can have a whole complex universe created, Star Wars, let's talk about. And there's like 4 Black people in the whole Star Wars universe. They've got planets, aliens that look like fish and all kinds of stuff. But you've got 4 Black people.
You got Lando. You got Lando.
Lando, you got Mace Windu, you got John Boyega. And John Boyega, when he was cast as Finn and the first trailer showed him popping up, he got like a whole racist charge.
Yep.
Like they started a campaign called Boycott Disney because they felt that Disney, J.J. Abrams, the white director that did like the Star Wars, and all of them were all in some kind of conspiracy to like erase whiteness. Like, have you seen the Star Wars movies? So just because one Black guy pops up in a Stormtrooper outfit, oh, it's turning Black.
Right.
Oh, turning feminine. There's too many women in this thing. Like, it's so ridiculous the way like white fragility has played out, you know? And in many ways is like, doesn't just play out innocuously, right? It's violence. Let's be real.
Yes,
so,
I agree with what Sharon said. Yeah, like, have you seen Avatar? Have you seen Dune? Have you seen Harry Potter? Have you seen basically, you know, Last of the Mohicans? I mean, we can just keep going, you know.
As soon as there's a little bit of shine, like, you know, we haven't talked about it, but like in terms of the Lego world, I'm sure there's adult fans of Lego that are just like, oh, another Ekow Nimako sculpture of these Black kids. It's like all we've seen is white kids with Lego. Like,
Exactly.
go to the Legoland parks. I haven't been to them, but I'm sure every character is pretty much white, and the ones that are Black, like Michael Jordan,
only people are only brown people are basketball players. Yeah.
Exactly. So this workshop, it's so important in that way, and like especially for educators who have to deal with like school boards and these kind of restrictions about like curriculums and what they're trying to teach. Teachers have to be so creative to work outside the bounds and with tight budgets to like really bring some diversity and inclusion into the classroom. So something like this, and just seeing the reaction that kids have when I did go into the classrooms at that time to say, oh, we get to build Lego in school today? Cool, that's fun. And it's like, wait. We're building Black people out of Lego today in class? Wait. We're building Black people, and they're not just Black people, but they're my descendants. So who I'm building is gonna be my great grandson. Yes, if that's who you want them to be. And just that alone, like seeing the teachers come up to me afterwards and being like, yo, some of the kids had so much like different behavioral issues, or they just were disinterested in material and stuff. I've never seen them so activated as when this was happening. And there's the pedagogical aspect of it is important too, because I know that for principals, it was important that, okay, it's fun for them to play Lego, but what's the learning here? What's the takeaway? And it's like, well, that's where the tutorial video comes in. Because if you watch it, you'll see it's like, it's talking about some really like important concepts that will only help to reinforce positive senses of identity for all of these kids, and not just Black kids, of course, you know, for any kids that are even racialized or non-racialized, where it's just like, okay, think about it. My great-grandfather came from England. He was a white man that, you know, had a white family in England, went to Ghana as some exploitative like mining operation as an accountant, and got involved with a woman there, part of the Fanti tribe, my great-great-grandmother, and then they had my great-grandfather and so forth. And, you know, so there's a whole side of my family in England that I'm sure doesn't even know about it, because I'm sure he didn't tell his wife he started this family in Ghana, you know? And it's just, it's so interesting to just understand that who you are now, what your family looks like now, may not be how they look, you know, in very short amount of time, in few generations, you know? And if all the commercials are to be believed, like it's gonna be all mixed soon. Everyone's gonna be mixed, you know? They love to do that. Fluffy-haired, light-skinned girls and the fluffy-haired families in the commercials. It's so crazy, but I'm again being tangential.
So let's get into some Q&A before we have to wrap up. So if you have a question, feel free to write it in the chat, or you can message me directly or Shane. What questions do people have, just throw them on in there.
And while we're waiting for people to ask questions, can I ask you a question, Jeff? Because you went into classrooms and did this kind of teaching about engineering with Lego, what do you think you would have done if you hadn't met Ekow Nimako, but you had access to like some of the, you know, the blocks, the sets of blocks maybe that he was using? Like how might you have brought this into a classroom?
Yeah, so I mean, I was running STEM classes for like, I don't know, like 15 years. And I think a lot of teachers get intimidated that it's like, it's a very complicated process. But once you bring Lego into the classroom, I'm sure, Ekow, you've noticed this as well. Once you bring it, you are the hero.
Yeah.
You are the hero teacher, because you are now bringing something that is considered play, right? And then all of a sudden you're almost slipping in learning throughout it. So just the idea of then building stories, that's what Ekow was basically saying. How can we use this Lego right here to build stories that represent me and also teach me about history at the same time? And when you're able to connect that all together, it's such a more empowering experience. You know, I remember one of our educators, Ben, taught the Trail of Tears through Lego, where he literally just built, you know, people representing all the people that died on the Trail of Tears. And kids just built minifigures in silence for 45 minutes, just thinking about the scale of the amount of people that perished because of that. That is a fascinating way in which to teach education, in a way that people actually embody it, and not just, you know, it's not just told to you as usually a lot of. Oh, and then I think Linger has a question.
Yeah. Linger, and Sharon also had a question, but she didn't raise her hand yet. So well, let's go with Linger and then Sharon. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Linger.
Hi, Linger. Thank you both so much for your talk. And my question was about something you mentioned a little bit in the beginning, and I think you were digging into it the whole time, but I'd love just more of your thoughts about just this idea of play and the importance of play. And I'm curious as to how you see it interacting with, I don't know, identity or liberation or Blackness. I found that really compelling.
Well, I think it's really just, and thank you, it's a great question. It speaks to what, like, you know, Jeff was talking about in terms of just like that play, like bringing into companies even the idea of play, because as adults, especially, like, you know, play isn't something, unless that's what you do, you know, it's not something that, I mean, you're told it's like, that's kid stuff. Like, you know, you're not supposed to play. You're supposed to think about bills, like, you know, and I think it's just that fact, like whether you're a child or whether you're an adult, play is super, super important, right? You have to keep those gears going in your mind. You have to like respond to the world in a way that is lighthearted, you know? So I think, and also it's just, I mean, when you consider like the school to prison pipeline and all the things forcing particularly racialized, particularly Black kids to grow up so fast, it's like to just let them be able to be like, and I saw that in many of the classrooms when I'd go in there, like there's this kind of, I have to be tough, you know, I have to like, you know, you put on the thick skin, it's like playing, I'm 13, I don't play. But once the play starts happening, then they actually start to do it. Like I would do these workshops with like other after school programs, and there'd be older kids in there. And I mean, high school, like I was even done with Lego when I was in high school. I was like, whatever, like, you know, but over time, you know, the kids start out, they're like, whatever. And then I see them start building, and then they're talking about the stuff that they normally talk about as teenagers, like, you know, the things important to their world, but they're still taking care to make this thing out of Lego that they wanted to make, you know, this face, they want to find the right piece. Yo, why are you taking my piece? Yo, blah, 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 blah. Like, you know, they get into it, you know, and I think that's really, really, really significant, because they need to be able to still be children, you know, they can't be just like, you know, like forced to grow up and to have to deal with, honestly, just like the white supremacy that is just approaching us everywhere we go, at every turn. The microaggressions of your white teacher saying just one small thing that'll set you off for the whole day and make you feel less than, or make you feel like you're already being criminalized, you know, for something that you don't, like, it's not your fault. You know, kids are gonna, like, so many kids, I remember there was a study at one point before, like, the breakfast at school programs got, like, started picking up a lot of ground. A lot of the times these behavioral issues were linked to the fact that people were hungry, you know? And then where does that link to? That links to social and economic problems that they have at home. Like, you know, dad can't get work, mom, this is situation, or even worse situation, dad's locked up, and this is the situation that's fallen on me. So without exploring the whys as to what's happening with young people, and in particular, you'll never get to the real solution. And I think that's what's always missing, is just that why. And for the kids themselves, just letting them be themselves and be able to play and connect to their younger selves, because that's what I do all the time. I'm constantly in this state of connecting to I even have a picture of 6-year-old me from my passport picture in my studio. It just reminds me that I, as a 6-year-old, it's almost like there's this astral connection between myself now and through the dimensions, my young 6-year-old self, who still lives in me and is still there wanting to do these things. And so many people, the connection is severed. You know, yeah. So many people. Video games sometimes might keep that, but then not really, because have you seen Grand Theft Auto? Like, you're not being a kid in the video game, you're being an adult terrorizing your neighborhood, you know, like that's not necessarily helping kids to be kids.
And I'll just add one last part to that, is like, play is all about liberation as well. And perfection is like the root of white supremacy, and play is the opposite of perfection. So when you are letting yourself actually play, you are letting yourself be your full self. So yes, Sharon, we want to get to your question before we have to wrap up.
Well, first of all, I am loving this on so many levels, okay?
Oh, because...
And I just really, and my grandson, his name is Kofi, so you know he's got one of those, right? All right, and he's an artist. So, and I see him in you, and so that's so wonderful. But that wasn't even my question. My question is, you're on now, because we're all up, you know, as artists, we have to, when we do our public thing, we have to be up and we're talking. But what do you like in the studio when you are working? Are you, what's your person, I mean, how do you withdraw?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I listen to a lot of audiobooks when I'm in the studio, audiobooks and music. So it's like, you know, I have the bottom level of my home is where I operate. I like to be at home. So yeah, it's really just like listening to audiobooks that put me into the spirit. I listen to a lot of Octavia Butler. Again, you know, like there was like a Black queer woman that was a good friend of mine at that time, and she introduced me to Octavia Butler. I didn't know who Octavia Butler was, you know?
Okay.
We're talking, that was like 2014. So the fact that, you know, and then I started listening to these audiobooks, and as I'm building, I'm hearing these stories about Black characters doing all these amazing things, and it just filters into my mind, you know, and the next thing you know, I see something I've built and I'm like, oh yeah, I think I was thinking about that story when this happened and this came about. So I kind of put myself into the zone that way. Honestly, a lot of times too, it's just silence too. Like I'll find that before, like maybe something caused me to stop a song to just get my head straight. And then next thing I know, 2 hours have passed by in complete silence and I'm just like kind of working away. So I'm fortunate that I was always granted a certain amount of space to do what I need to do. And I mean, as a sculptor, you always need space, right? You know, you can't work in very small spaces. So I've been fortunate in that way that I've had the space to create and the space to have my own sense of like solitude and peace. You know, more than anything in the world, you know, I feel really at peace when I'm doing it. And I think, again, that connects to me being a child. And like, you know, unless when we're not speaking about children that are in unfortunate and like very, very traumatic situations, like their living environments, childhood is freedom, you know, yes. Despite the lack of agency, because you got to go to bed at a certain time, you eat what's given to you, you do what you're told. But when you're not being told to do something, you are free. You're feeding your mind, you're playing with your toys, the world is yours. You know, it's like, I think it's because that lack of agency is what makes kids' imagination so expansive, you know? And because that was my experience watching cartoons and playing with Lego and feeling free, when I do it now, despite having all kinds of like adult stresses on my mind, just like the rest of us, whether it's mortgages and rent, whether it's just turning on the TV or scrolling and seeing, another Black person killed, like this, you know, it really weighs on the soul, like heavily on the soul.
Yeah.
So to be able to do something where everything can kind of just go away and you can feel free, and even in that space you're still doing things for the culture, it's 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 uplifting in a way I can't even describe. It's invaluable.
I just wanted to let you know my son is a designer, and he works for Tesla. He is a engineer designer, and what you just described was raising a gifted child. And you're right, you have to give them space. You can't impose, and then let them just imagine. And I mean, you could be my son. All right.
Awesome person.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. Jeff, I'm noticing the time.
What is it? Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we were supposed to end right here. I don't know if you have time for one last question, because that's very abrupt. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Of course.
Okay. Jeff, do you want to wrap up with a final question?
Yeah, so my final question is is there something that you haven't shared yet that you want us to walk away with, that we can then pass on, to inspire people the way in which, like, I feel inspired just hearing your story?
Yeah, I mean, and I've talked a lot, I've said a lot, so I don't know if there's anything that I haven't touched on. It might be more like rehashing something, but I guess it would just be that play factor, because I think that's where you and I also meet in the same kind of world, right? Where it's just encouraging others and inspiring others to play and be playful. It doesn't necessarily, in fact, yeah, that's it. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to get down in the trenches with your kids and get in there with the toys. And even though I'm sure they would love that, it's also just being playful, and keeping that spirit alive, because I think that will help so much of us, right? Like, connecting to these younger generations that are coming up, because they're coming up in a difficult time. It's a real tough time, like online learning and just all of that stuff, and just like talking to my stepson, he's 7, and just having conversations about coronavirus with him. It's strange and frightening, like having to give these sobering facts about this virus and hearing him talk about it like it's this thing, like yeah, because the virus is there still, and just saying small things, it's frightening, and it's debilitating so many ways. So to just try to remember what it's like to be a child and keep that spirit alive, and also go to my website and get yourself a workshop kit.
I put the link in. I actually did put the link in. I thought people might be interested.
So many things. It was supposed to launch like last week, and then website problems and problems. So even right now, I don't know if it's fully ready to be purchased, but the site is up and there. So within the next week, it'll be ready to fly, and we'll start putting out the commercials for it and stuff. And the Lego movie is going to come out in February, and that's going to do so much. So I'm going to need admin support. I'm anticipating I'll need more support than I already have. So yeah, it's going to be an exciting time. And if I can help usher that in and just inspire more Black kids out there, then I've done my job, I've done it.
Thank you so much. This was so awesome. I love this. Shane, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I mean, no, I wish that movie were out today instead of in February. When you said it, I was feverishly searching online to see if I had missed it. So I'm excited about that.
I have a feeling you won't miss it when it comes out. They're really pulling all the stops for it. And I'm supposed to be going to Denmark, COVID depending, in February to set up the artwork, but then also do some stuff on the campus and artist talks and whatever. So I got to give it up to them. They're doing great things in terms of supporting, and they picked the right dude. Because if anyone do it, it'll be me. I'll usher the wave in.
That's great. I just want to thank both of you. I was really looking forward to hearing a conversation between the two of you, and you did not disappoint. Thank you so much for interviewing Jeff and for coming to be interviewed, Ekow. And we actually, so this session was set to be an hour. You have another half hour before the next session begins, or actually 35 minutes. I will stay on and leave the room open if anyone would like to stay in and have conversations about maybe like what this would look like in your classroom. But I want to say to Jeff and Ekow, thank you again, and you are free.
Yeah,
I just threw Ekow's YouTube channel in there as well that you should check out, because the two videos there are just absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you.
and then reach out to me. Like my email address is, or any of my assistants or whoever is there. So you can reach out to Ekow Nimako Studios, go to the website at www.ekownimako.com, and pretty much all the information is there. Feel free to reach out and email with any questions that you have. And, yeah, thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it. You know, the one thing I'll say, America, like the US, doesn't really know about me. You know, that's the interesting thing. Like I've gotten some national like exposure here, but aside from some pockets in the States, like they really don't know about what I'm doing. And there's just like so much more Black people in the States that it can. So I'm just like, all of y'all need to know about this. So like Boston, you and just everything y'all doing, and at Berkeley, the connections, like I really appreciate it, and just like spreading the word too, because that's what fills my heart, is knowing that more Black people are like seeing this work, you know. So
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here too. You're all really great.
Thank you. This is a great concept or way of thinking about liberation, I think, what you're describing. So
Liberation through play. Let's go.
exactly, because it contradicts the very idea of like a person whose only purpose is to produce for you, to say I'm going to use my time for myself, to not do that, that's resistance. So
Oh, for sure. Well, thank
all
you all.
right.
And I'll
Thanks.
hopefully see you all soon, some point in the future. Take
Yep.
care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day, both of you. Whoops. Jeff, you're still here with me. Oh, there you go. I will leave the room open for a little while. I'm just curious, because you all are still here, if you have any thoughts about how that would show up in a classroom. Kelly, you said that your students you thought would really be excited by seeing this. I was curious if you had plans in that regard, how you're going to share it.
Well, right now my son has kind of commandeered the computer to look at the Lego, so
I'm not surprised.
but exactly, not surprising at all. I checked out Ekow's website when I got the information from you guys, and I shared it with our art teacher right away, because I guess I don't consider myself a very well-rounded artist.
Okay.
Things, but honestly, it was really wonderful to hear him incorporate like the futuristic part for students. Like most of my students are white. Most of my students are like have a very limited stereotypical understanding of Africa in general. And I just really feel like for them, sorry, it's a little loud.
It's okay. I'm glad he's having fun.
for them, okay, Lai, you need to go to the other room. For them to look at when we're talking about Ghana, Mali, Songhai this year in 6th grade, for them to look at futuristic Kumbi Saleh and to say, okay, like how you have to come up with, you know, we can integrate ELA and into social studies. And it was like, okay, so, you know, you're going to be doing this art project and you're going to have to come up with a story for this character that you're working on. And it has to be like well thought out. It has to be something that you spend time and you think about, and like kind of a culminating project for our studying Africa as like medieval African civilizations as a unit, right? I really like incorporating all of those pieces together better than some of the suggestions that our art teacher put forward for like, oh, we could do masks. And I was like, no, you can't, no, please.
No, I think this is really interesting, the idea of, and it fits with the whole idea of what we've been working on for the this session today, is the idea of looking at the future, imagining a future. Instead, Jeff, I'm so glad you came back. I didn't want to force you to stay, but I'm very happy to have you. I undersold your past history of going into schools and teaching this, and so I'm happy that you came back to like help us think about what that might look like in the classroom.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your insights with that with us as well. Because I feel like a lot of this stuff that I've seen my colleagues and that we've done before myself, teaching things about Africa, it's often done like out of the context where the history and things that things have come from, and that's not good enough. And I really like being able to connect the past and the future through this, and get kids to look at perspectives that they're not considering.
Thank you.
I will say something. There's something also powerful about using Lego in the classroom or toys in the classroom, but a lot of times Lego, because it's a co-creating space. All of a sudden even though you're facilitating as the teacher, everyone is building together. And I've taught gentrification to junior high kids through Lego. I've, talked about, like really tough historical moments with Lego as well. And it's amazing that kids get it when they're like building it with you, instead of the way in which current educational system is done, where it's like you're just downloading information all the time and you're never really actually feeling the history or feeling the information.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a concept about how you were thinking about possibly teaching it, or was this, I'm perfectly happy for this to have just been a moment of inspiration. I will say that is pretty much how I felt when I first saw Ekow's work. And Lydia Curtis and Dumas Lafontaine, if you two, I don't know where you teach or what you're, and Sharon, are you a teacher? Are you a K-12 teacher? Oh, there you go.
Okay, I got it. Yeah, I'm a teacher, educator, all those things. I mean, I teach from the womb to the tomb. All right, I've been teaching people of all ages, and so I'm really loving the idea of Legos, and I've seen Legos used in a way to do things better, but I've never seen anything like Ekow's doing. And so, I find that, but then also incorporating it into the classroom. I'm an art teacher, I'm an artist, okay? And I wanted to get into the classroom, especially with early elementary level, because I found that was where we lose our children, especially Black children, the boys especially, and that's a whole nother piece. But I wanted to get in there so that they would not lose the desire to play. And, but it also comes from what you do at home. And so play, we're dealing with generations of people who have forgotten to play or couldn't play or had so many, like Ekow was talking about, had so many other issues to deal with, that play became something that you just didn't have time for. So, it's really important. And Jeff, I really want to talk to you more, because I'm now working with elders. I'm working with seniors. I'm following my age group. And so I'm following the seniors, trying to get them into technology. All right. And and then getting into loving to play. And so I really would like to talk to you more about that too. Great.
I think you bring up a really good point that I've actually seen in intergenerational builds. So we used to do something, a long time ago, there would be kids that would actually go to either senior citizen like homes, and they would build together. And watching those two different generations coming together, again, co-building, co-facilitating, like feeling like equals, even though they're different, experiencing different parts of their life, is so powerful. It's just so powerful.
I'm working on a project now that I'm going to be doing workshops in January on heritage boxes, where you can get intergenerational exchanges and storytelling and all these wonderful things that happen when people who are my age and older are telling stories and also restoring brain memory. So, and they do it with their younger generations. I mean, I taught at the university level for years, and we did this experience. And what it did for the family unit, where people who were in college who didn't even know their grandparents, or they had preconceived notions of who they were, and they couldn't pass my class unless they talked to their grandmama or granddaddy. And I mean, and the kinds of relationships that were built. So, you know, it's really important. I love the idea. So, yeah, we're going to talk. So please put your email in the chat.
I'll throw my email in here.
And I'll put mine too.
And this does remind me, I once ran this program with International Rescue Committee, where they had just brought a lot of families from Eritrea and, you know, different other parts of Africa, as well as also from like Latin America. And we gave them the opportunity to build something from their hometown. Like, you know, what type of food do you eat? How was your town set up? Like, whatever they wanted to build, they could build it. And then we brought, this was happening near Maryland, and then we brought a bunch of families in. I think it was like 300 families to meet all of these new immigrants to this part of like Maryland. I think it was Bethesda, Maryland. And people got to like learn from them. And then they built DC out of Lego, like together. But just like that exchange, I realized like play has a healing tech, you know, tool to it. Play like can really bring people together, even when there are language barriers that are getting in the way.
Exactly. Wow, that's great.
I didn't even know about that, but if I had, it would have made me invite you twice instead of just one. I would have sent double emails.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Lydia and Dumas, do you want to interject anything? Or not? It's fine. Okay. So Jeff, you put your email in there. Sharon, did you share your email?
Oh, no, not yet. I will.
Okay. Okay.
Let's see.
I think I will wind us down then.
Wait a minute, let me put this in.
Okay. Oh, Dumas, don't let me stop you. I saw it, your moment of unmuting there. You're welcome to interject. Okay. Oh, Jeff, that's the IRC Lego thing. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great. I appreciate it. All right. Well, I will say thank you to you again, Jeff, and thank you to you all who are participants for joining. I really appreciate it. And I hope to see you in one of the future sessions. Okay.
Thanks so much for having me. Take care, everyone.
Thank
See ya.
you. Have a great afternoon.